What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and what I'm going to try to do here is make sense of the entire 2015 summer event that Marvel's been talking about. I'm going to try to give it to you guys in a way to where you can walk away from this video understanding exactly what's going on, or at least as much as everybody else does. So what we need to do is we basically need to establish the concept of the Marvel timeline. We need to talk about what all this means. All right, so what I've done here is I've made this little timeline here in Photoshop, and what we're going to do is we're going to systematically go through here and we're going to highlight important dates in the history of Marvel's continuity. So the first thing is the 1960s. All right, the 1960s is when you see Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, and Steve Ditko. Between these three people, they create the most prominent characters that have existed in Marvel Comics. The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man, Thor, Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, the Avengers, the X-Men, so on and so forth. These are the people that have been created in the 1960s. But the other thing is that the 1960s established a shared continuity. Prior to the 1960s, there wasn't a shared continuity. Characters existed in what would be referred to as their own reality, their own continuity. In the 1960s, Thor crossed over with Iron Man. In the 1960s, the Fantastic Four crossed over with the X-Men, so on and so forth. This is when we saw groups like the Avengers come into existence. All right, what we do now is we jump to 1981. And the reason why we jump to 1981 specifically is because this is when Marvel launches the Days of Future Past. This has been Marvel's most successful alternate reality story to date. Now, when I say successful, I mean in the sense of fanfare and popularity among historians and comic book readers. The Days of Future Past gave us a timeline whereby Mystique, led by the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, had traveled to a meeting with Charles Xavier and Moira McTaggart and Senator Robert Kelly. During this meeting, the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants killed Charles Xavier, Senator Kelly, and Moira McTaggart live on TV in an effort to instill fear of mutants in the eyes of humanity. The result of this was that humans feared them, but in turn, they rebooted the Sentinel program. But the Sentinel program became autonomous, it became self-aware, and it decided because mutants are an extension of the evolution of humans, they have to control both mutants and humans, and so they enslaved them both and became very oppressive. Now, Marvel had to find a way out. They had to find a way to fix this problem. And so what they did is they said that Rachel Summers is going to send the mind of Kitty Pryde into the past. Kitty Pryde's mind goes into the body of her younger self in the past. She warns the X-Men. The X-Men are able to stop the assassination of Senator Robert Kelly, Moira McTaggart, and Charles Xavier, but then Marvel encounters a problem. And Marvel says if this was able to happen, if they were able to stop the assassination, then how was it that Kitty Pryde's mind was able to go back into the past in the first place and stop an assassination that never happened? They created a paradox. And so what Marvel did is they made the Days of Future Past an alternate reality. They made it a totally separate continuity from what we had seen with this particular circumstance. And this is what Marvel's going to do any and every time there is any kind of an event that alters reality in the mainstream continuity. If that reality is altered, Marvel's going to go back and rectify it, and then that altered reality is going to become an alternate reality of its own. It's going to branch off and become something totally different. Now, sometimes we'll see these realities come to an end in that story. Sometimes we won't, and we'll be left to wonder whether or not that reality still continues on. A lot of times we won't be given an answer to that question. The Days of Future Past is a perfect example here. Now, what we do here is we jump to 1983. And the reason we jump to 1983 is because in Marvel UK, where Marvel was trying to branch out into the United Kingdom with comic books, we had seen what was referred to as the Captain Britain Corps. This was basically a group that was a variant of the Green Lantern Corps from DC Comics. A man, Brian Braddock, in Britain fought under the guise of Captain Britain, but he was one of many from alternate realities. In 1983, Marvel for the first time would ever use the designation Earth 616, referring to the mainstream Earth continuity. And so this is when we learn that the mainstream Marvel continuity, where everything has taken place since the 1960s, is Earth 616. From this point going forward, Marvel would start using numerical designations to differentiate between Earth 616 and other continuities. Now, what this does is it leads us to 12 years later. This leads us to 2011-2012 when Marvel launches the Incursions. And what had happened here is Jonathan Hickman and Marvel had gotten together and they had decided that basically the entire multiverse needed to be pruned. They had to do some house cleaning here. There were way too many alternate realities, some of which we had seen finish, some of which we had seen come to an end. Others were presumably still going on and they were just kind of left in the air and we had no idea. And so what Jonathan Hickman did is he basically introduced us to the idea of alternate realities, and we saw more realities realities than we had ever seen than at any other point in Marvel history. What this did is it allowed Jonathan Hickman to do two things. It allowed him to give us realities that we had always wanted to see, but it also allowed him to get rid of realities that didn't need to exist. Now, what this is doing is this leads into the 2015 summer event. And what this does is it basically allows Marvel to kill off all the unnecessary realities. It allows them to continue, or I guess to conclude stories that had been left hanging, but it allows Marvel to bring us a continuation of all the realities that we had enjoyed, but we had never seen a conclusion of. And so what Marvel is going to do here is, as far as they've told us, the last incursion, that is to say, the last two planets that crash into each other, are going to belong to the Earth 616 continuity and the Ultimate Universe. And what's going to happen is the universes are going to crash into one another, and they're both going to be destroyed, presumably. This is going to lead to a formation of a place called Battle World. And what this is going to do is allow Marvel to take all their most popular stories that they've ever done, and they're going to throw them all on this one world. Now, this is where things get sticky, and this is where things get a little confusing. What we don't know here is how much contact characters are going to have. We know they're going to fight eventually, or I guess initially. We know that there may have some conflicts as time goes on, but we don't know if Miles Morales as Spider-Man from the Ultimate Universe is going to be fighting crime in the same city as Peter Parker as Spider-Man. We don't know if Gwen Stacy is going to be in existence in the same universe as Spider-Man. We don't know if these things are going to play off this way. We don't know if they're going to exist this way. All we know is that things are just going to play out in such an interesting way that most likely we're going to have to buy the individual books and so on and so forth. But what this Battle World is Marvel's new continuity. From this point going forward, or when the Battle World actually starts, there will be no more alternate realities. There are no more alternate timelines. There's nothing left hanging out there. This is it. And so what we can do is we can say that this Battle World is Marvel issue number 1. This is Marvel World number 1. This is continuity number 1. This is Marvel basically starting all over again. But the difference here is that the continuity of various characters that have existed in the past, their origins still remain. And that's why I say this is a little weird. Again, we're waiting on information from Marvel. We're waiting for them to fill in the blanks and give us more info on what's going on. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and bring this video to an end. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, let me know, and I will catch you guys later. Peace. Be sure to follow me on Twitter. There you can keep up with all the updates from Comics Explained and talk to me directly.